everybody. This is Adam Gussow with a short but pointed video that I'm going to title, Are You Too Old to Start Playing Blues Harmonica? You know, as somebody whose email is out there, as somebody whose website, whose YouTube videos are out there, I get quite a bit of commentary and quite a bit of email. And every now and then, with some frequency, I get an email from an older person. I'm 61, of course, still young and vital, but I get emails from people my age, older, sometimes 70, 75, 80. I got an email from somebody who was 80, just discovering the joys of blues harmonica. And the question they have is the same question all the time, which is, am I too old to start playing blues harmonica? Or, like, should I do this? And my answer overwhelmingly is yes. And I know that that's the case. One of the reasons I know this is because when I first started teaching at the Guitar Studies Center in New York, it was the fall, I think, of 1986. I would have been 28 years old, barely old enough to be telling everybody that you can learn blues harmonica from me. But I'd been playing for quite a while at that point, and I had started to play on the streets of Harlem with Mr. Satan. You've probably seen that documentary on Netflix called Satan and Adam. So I was just starting that adventure at the age of 28, and there I am teaching harmonica, and I had a 50-year-old student. His name was Bob Bavido, B-A-V-I-D-O, Bob. You're probably not watching this, but one of my stars. Bob was kind of, he's been a touchstone for the decades that because within 2 years he was in 2 bands, and he could play. In other words, within 2 years, he was in 2 bands. He was making money doing what we used to call the $50 gigs. A trio would get $150 in New York. This is in the mid '80s. That was your basic bread and butter gig, a $50 gig, and we were happy to get those gigs. Now that would be your $100 gig, and I'm happy to get those gigs. You know, we like those gigs. He was in 2 bands. How did he get there? Well, he practiced all the time. He was obsessed. He said, I go into the can and I bring the harp and I just play sitting on the toilet. I mean, it goes everywhere with me. So, are you too old to start playing? If somebody who's 50 asks me, I always say, hell no. No, you're not too old to start playing. But it's really, how far you get, it's going to depend on the following things. Number one, there is such a thing as innate talent. My son has it. My 13-year-old son has perfect pitch, and he just can play any instrument, and that's just innate talent. I can't play any instrument, so he didn't get it from me. He can read music like a mofo. It's quite remarkable. That's innate talent. You can't. That's either there or it's not. But it's not required. I must have had some, but I don't have what my son has, because at the age of 13, I was playing chopsticks on the piano. I wasn't playing Stars and Stripes Forever on the trumpet, trombone, piano, flute, and alto sax, and bass, electric bass, as he is. So I don't have that much. I just have some, but probably enough. There's some. So you need some innate talent, but you can compensate for that with hard work and a willingness. So a willingness to put in the time. So what does hard work mean? Actually, what it means is dedication to the daily grind. It doesn't have to be a grind, but it has to be 5 or 6 days a week. What I tell people is, if you can do 15 or 20 minutes, 5 or 6 days a week, you're going to learn and you're going to make progress. Now, what should you be doing with that time? And would you be getting better and closer to putting in your 10,000 hours for extreme competency if you were putting in more time than that? Yes, but would it be better if you put in 15 minutes twice a day? Absolutely. Do you have to go all 7 days? No. But why is that important? And so, are you too old? No, but you have to go about it the right way. And one suggestion I have, if somebody says, I can only afford 15 minutes a day, when should I put that 15 minutes in? I actually think it's better to do it first thing in the morning, or in the morning before you head off to work, in the morning. And here's why. But the next best is probably before you go to sleep, but then you might not sleep well. But here's why. It's called latent learning. So when you do something in the morning, you set something in motion, and for the rest of the day, even though you're doing other things, you've got your mind, the musical part of your mind that you own. They don't own it at the office. The Mad Men and company, they don't own it. That's your musical mind. You've set it loose. It's cycling in there. It's processing. Basically, you're doing parallel processing. You're doing your daily work, right? But meanwhile, your mind is going, oh, wait a minute, Gussow. While you're doing your other stuff. And so you're gaining something by just that 15 minutes a day. And that's why it's so important to do it as many days in a row as you can. Because if you put it aside, that part of you goes to sleep. It's not working, which is why even 15 minutes gets that stuff booted up. It's booted up. It's on sleep, but doesn't need to be booted up again. Does that make sense? And it's probably not even on sleep. It's probably doing something while you were sleeping. So 15 minutes in the morning. What about 15 minutes before bed? That's also good. That's where the latent learning comes in. Latent learning is when your body, which is engaged in that processing, your mind and your body, while you're doing something else, it's engaged in, and it figures stuff out. It solves problems. Which brings us to the sort of hugely important point, is that getting good, especially if you're an older novice, getting good is mostly a matter of balancing two things. Number one, feeling good about the sounds you're making right now and taking pleasure in them. And number two, being able to constructively criticize and assess where you are relative to what your next level would be. What's your next level? What's the edge? And not getting depressed. One thing that can happen to beginners is that they then go and hear a player like Dennis Grunling or Jason Ritchie or Billy Branch or Sugar Blue, who would just go, I should give up right now. Bad idea. You have to be able to balance taking pleasure from your music with saying I can get better, and never giving up on keeping the tension going between those two things. I can get better. And then creatively figuring out where your edge is. What's the next thing I have to learn? What can't I do? And how can I get incrementally better? If you can just learn one thing a day, I would say learn one little thing a day. Those things add up. And then they start sort of working with each other, and then you take a leap forward. There's a couple of other things and so if you want to learn, especially as an older student, but these principles are important no matter how old you are, but especially as an older student, you can't waste time. You can't learn to speak blues harmonica unless you're listening to really good blues harmonica. It's like learning how to speak French. You got to go to Paris where the people really know how to speak French, or put yourself in a community where everybody's speaking French. Then you'll have it in your ears. Well, exactly the same thing is true with blues. You have to have the good stuff cycling through. You cannot just create the music. You can't learn to play blues harmonica by creating it from scratch. You got to have the stuff cycling through, and then you begin the way a child does. You begin to babble. You begin to yearn towards that recording, that MP3 or that record or that CD or whatever, or the live show. Oh, there's Billy Branch. I'm going to try to copy his lick right now. We've all been there, right? The annoying person up front who's sort of noodling because they're maybe trying to copy or maybe just trying to jam along. We appreciate that, but then again, we don't appreciate that. But you need to have that level of obsessional. We do recognize and respect that level of obsessional hunger and focus. So take that, do something constructive with it. But go to my website, Modern Blues Harmonica. I have a top 10 list. So put in greatest blues harmonica players. Search that in Google. I think you'll find that list. And go and get some of the music by those people. We all know who they are. The all-time kind of list is certainly going to have Little Walter, Big Walter Horton. It's going to have James Cotton. It's going to have Junior Wells. It's going to have Jimmy Reed. It's going to have, there's a range of Sonny Boy Williamson, Sonny Boy 1 and Sonny Boy 2. Those are some basic things some basic music that you need to have cycling through. So I think this lesson's done. This is not really a lesson. I didn't really play much in the way of harmonica, but I told you what you need to know. Number one, if you're older, yes, there is hope. And then, of course, lesson plan for success. So I'll just suggest Google Gussow lesson plan for success harmonica, and you'll find a 12-point plan on my website. And of course, some of it involves you buying stuff from me, but that's not really the point. The point is actually look at the different stages, because you should be at a certain point playing along with jam tracks. At a certain point, making your move and going to a jam session. Taking notes at the jam session. What are they doing? What songs do I need to learn? And at a certain point, finding other musicians to begin to pair off with or work with so that you really begin to develop a repertoire. There's all kinds of stages. But what I've given you is the basics, the really important basics. Let's see if I can remember the basics as I gave them. Number one, it helps to have talent, but you don't absolutely need talent. You certainly don't need a lot of talent. You need some talent, probably, but you can still have fun. Number two, you need to put in the time on a daily basis. 15 to 20 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week is enough to make forward progress. You need to take pleasure in what you're doing right now while retaining an ability to sense what it is that you can't do, because we've all met the person who can't really play very much but thinks they're the greatest harmonica player in their town. Maybe they are, but they're not very good, but they think they're better than they are. Well, how to get over that? Well, listen to the really good stuff. Get that French, that blues harmonica language cycling through your head. And then, of course, find a teacher. I have stuff at Modern Blues Harmonica. I always recommend that people go to Ronnie Shellist and David Barrett, Harmonica 123 and bluesharmonica.com. Those are two really, they're both friends of mine, people I've worked with, and they both have wonderful stuff. My website, I like to think, has some good stuff. But also, if there's some technique you're interested in, just go on YouTube and Google Gussow and the technique, and you'll find that at some point in the last decade, I put a video out there. I'll play a little something and we're done. And the other thing, by the way, is when you see an older person taking the risk, making some music, discovering the blues harmonica side of their soul, tell them that sounds nice. That would be a good thing to do. All right. See you down the road. Bye-bye.